Hi guys, I'm just recording this little video as a really quick, simple process on how we would create a 3D virtual shop. There are a number of ways which we can do this. One of the ways would be using a piece of software called SketchUp, so Google SketchUp as it used to be. It's now changed hands. We could also start to build that in Illustrator, 3ds Max, or a number of other different softwares that would allow us to create building types. One of the softwares which I use on a daily basis is a program called Revit. It's designed and programmed by Autodesk, so the full name is Autodesk Revit, and the version that we're going to be using for this particular exercise is Autodesk Revit 2020. So typically we would normally be given, or in my full-time role, we'd be given a model with the building already designed and built, typically from the architect, structural engineer, and the ground technicians who would assess and survey the ground. They'd work out the different levels of ground. They would then build that into a model. Then the architects would come along and build the outside structure, put the roof on, put all the levels in between. The structural engineer would work out all the structural beams and the encasements on how that would work together. And then we would come along and put in the electrical and mechanical heating, ventilation, and all the sockets and electrical infrastructure throughout the building. This software actually creates it all in the 3D environment. So once we've done all of that, we can then export it very simply, very quickly in the 3D. But we can obviously create 2D sheets so that the builders on site can then go away and start to build it and bring it to life. So how we do that? First of all, we open Autodesk Revit 2020 onto our laptops, our computers, whatever we're using. So for this instance, it's open already on my computer. So then we go into the new, so we're going to create a new project. And then for this instance, I'm going to be using the architectural because we don't have an architectural template for the shop that we're currently going to be building. We need to use the architectural template. So once we've done that, we just hit OK, and that creates a blank drawing screen for us. So something just to mention, in the background, I have already created a number of different files which we can use to bring in. So for that, I've created furniture files so we can start using wall shelves, doors. Lots of these can be done from manufacturers. So typically a door manufacturer would create a file that we could use into our 3D environment. But for the purpose of this, I've just created all of my own, and I've done this beforehand just to make this particular exercise a lot simpler. So once we've done that, we're in the model. We've got the drawing screen just in front of us. We've got coordinates which we can set. Typically, when we're looking at a building, we would put grid lines, and we can start to do all of this at this point. But for the purpose of this, I'm not going to be using any grid lines. I'm going to be keeping it as nice, simple as we possibly can. So the first process is to look at walls. So when we're looking at a building, typically architectural, we'd start to look at the walls, we'd start to look at the spatial constraints of the site. So if we an inbuilt function here is wall, so we just simply click the wall. We can see the different types here. So in this instance, I'm going to just be using the standard wall type, and then we just simply draw. We use the left click in the drawing window, and we can draw. We can see the dimensions appear. So at the moment, I've got a 5.4 meter room, so I'm just going to draw this to roughly about 10 meters. It's just for the purpose of this exercise. So I'm going to draw about 10 by 10 to make it nice and square, and then we can start to play around with the layouts if we need to. So as say, we'll just make it 10 by 10. So once we've done that, we just escape out of that command, and we can see we've now got this structure built as a typical wall. This would typically be the internal load-bearing structural wall on the internals. So something that we need to have a quick look at. This is currently drawn. We can see from the properties window here that this is currently drawn from level 0. So level 0 in the template file is set at ground level. So if we do have differing levels, we can obviously change to level 0, maybe level -1 if we've got a basement, and so on and so on. However, what we do need to look at here is the height of the building. So we've currently drawn this. We set no parameters before, and this is the chance now to change it. So we've currently drawn at 8 meters high. So for the purpose of this exercise, we are only looking at a very small building. So we probably only want 3, maybe 4 meters. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to draw this at 3.5 meters, so 3,500, and we're going to apply that, and that draws our external wall. So because, sorry, I said external wall, what we've actually drawn here is our internal load-bearing wall. So what we actually need is a brick facade. So we click on the wall. We then need to go down to the brick. We can obviously draw lots of other different types of wall. We can start putting in all of our footings. We can do as much as we want. We can put internal party walls, and we can start to really build up the structural. But just for this exercise, we're just drawing a nice simple building just to get something out there. So I've chosen the basic wall. This is just the external wall. I'm putting a bit of an air gap in between. Lots of reasons why we may want to do that, and I'm just simply again building up the wall. Nice simple clicks, and as soon as we've finished, we just hit escape, and now we've got our brick wall around the outside. So at the moment there's no way of accessing, so we need to add a door. So simply click on the door. That gives us lots of different options for a door, but I'm just going to use the standard, and all we simply do is we just drop it into wherever we want it. My door swing is on the internals, so that's what I'm going to do, and then we can see that that's added the door detail with all of the hinges and everything else that we need onto the brick facade. However, the internal wall just needs to be pulled back to make sure we've got that. We can then left click and create a similar wall type and just connect it on. Simple drag, left clicks, nothing too complex, and we can see there we have the wall. We then maybe want to put windows in. A very similar process. We just click the window and we just start dropping them in. Something to note as we're adding windows is we do have head height, so we can start to set the heights of the windows and where they're going to be, but we're not going to worry too much about it for this particular exercise. We can go into a lot of detail. Typically the architects would go into that amount of detail, and they'd start detailing up really complex models. We can also change the window details if we ever wanted to. But again, for the purpose of this, we're not going to. So once we've done that, we then now need to pull that internal wall back again, and we need to start creating some more details and some more sections just to make sure that is all as it would be built on site, making sure there is room for that cavity wall installation if that's what we've got. Obviously there's lots of different types of construction methods. We're not going to go into those during this video. Now I'll just quickly add these in. You can't see at the moment, but all I'm doing is I'm pulling stuff back. I'm left and right clicking as and when required. All nice and simple. So left click again, and then hit an escape. And then all we're doing is we're right clicking. So we're escaping. We're then right clicking. We're left clicking to create similar, and then we just move it around. No clicks. We get to our location. We left click. That allows us to start drawing. We drag it down and we left click. You can see there's a little purple box that's appeared there, so we just simply left click and that adds on, and then we escape to come out of that command. And there we have it, the base layout of our typical area. So first of all, when we're inside a building, obviously we go to the insides of the building. We may want to start looking at the internal room dimensions. What's inside, if we've got a toilet, if we've got an office, or if we just got an open plan space. But before we do that, quite importantly, we need a floor. So the flooring details, we again quite simply just go up to the floor and we're just going to hit floor. We're just going to use the standard floor type that's built in, and we're going to go the floor to the internals. So we're just literally left click on each of the wall items, and that's just going to give us a pink line which shows us our dimensions all the way around, and then we tick that. Okay, so what's this is saying, this has come up with an error because the lines aren't connected. So what we need to make sure here is all of these lines are connected, so we can just continue, and we just need to make sure that all of these are connected. So for the instance of this, we're going to draw the line ourselves because there's nothing there, and I'm just, unfortunately, because of the way it's been set up and we've got windows, we just need to use a line tool. So I'll just quickly run around and do this, and there we have it. We've got the details, and this will allow us now to come out. So if we just enter that, we can now see the floor detail. Something that I do need to do is obviously as you come through the window, the flooring detail here does need to. Sorry, as you come through the door, the flooring detail does need to extend through there. So if we was going into lots of detail, we may want to just draw that. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to draw it. Just going to amend this, so I can just pull this line quite simply, just using lines, drag and drop type functions. Just need to pull that across to there and then down, make sure that connects on, and then we just need to do exactly the same. So I'm going to pull that across again, just using left clicks on the mouse. No complex there. Just unjoin that, and then I'll come and rejoin it over here. Okay, so that's now rejoined. So we're just going to edit the mode, and there we can see I've extended the floor. So you can just see there how we can start to build up the model as and when we needed. There are some minor imperfections here which we'd need to resolve out if we was going to send this to a builder, but for the purpose of what we need, that's absolutely fine. So I did miss a step. As I did the outside wall, I left the wall at 8 meters high. So you can see these internal walls, if we click any of those, are at 3,500. So there is a reason that I've done that. So now at this point, what we need to do is select the entire outside dimension of the wall, and we need to move that down to 3,500. So you just simply hover over it, tab, and that allows us to select the entire external wall. Once we've done that, we can quite simply change that dimension there to 3,500, 3.5 meters, and there we have it, 3.5 meters high, with the floor in detail located at level 0. And there we have it, a small structure built, ready for our shop. So the next stage would be to put a roof on. So there's a number of different types of roof that we can have on. We're just going to use a basic pitched type roof, typically what you'd have in a house, just for the purpose of this exercise. So very similar to how we did before. Simply click the roof, left click, it then opens up the lowest level. So this would be where you'd start to set your levels. In this instance, we're only using one level, keep it nice and simple. So we've got level 1. For him, simply click yes to that. If we had level 0 on there, just so you know, that would then draw the roof at ground level, at floor level, which we don't want. We want it at level 1, which is at the top of these walls. So for the roof, we need the roof to go to the external walls. So we need to click on the external sides. It should draw it all the way across and give us a nice square. And then you simply hit OK. And that now draws us our roof detail. So I'm just left clicking and dragging across to highlight it all. Once we've done that, we can then start to look at our 3D element. There's a number of ways of doing this. So I'm just going to draw a selection box. So once we click selection box, you can then start to see how our building is started to be built up. So you can see the internal walls here, how we've cut them off. Typically they would need to extend across the windows just so to make sure, but for the purpose of what we've done, we've just cut it off just to save a little bit of time really. Obviously when this went in, if this building was to go into construction, they would put a plasterboard layer on top of these walls, which obviously we haven't added. So the roof, the flooring details added on, the roofing details not added on there, so we now need to go away and have a look at why that's not been added. So I've come back to my level 0 and I'm just having a look at my sheet. So again, another way of looking at a section, a 3D view, is by clicking this little house, which is just default, and that just takes us into our entire model. So I'm just going to redraw my roof, level 1, just to see why and where it's disappeared to. So as we're looking through all of these sections, so base offset from level 0, room bounding, we just need to go back through. Sometimes we do have small niggles in the software, and tick OK, and just have a look. There we go. So when we're in the 3D view, there is a section that we can start to pull off various different elements. So we can move this section so we can start to see inside the building by simply clicking a box. So what had happened just a moment ago, the section box was right down at the bottom, and therefore it was missing the roof area. Because we've drawn it twice, I'd imagine we do have 2 roofs. So if I left click and hit delete, that deletes one of the roofs. There we go, you can see that there was 2 roofs and now the one is still there. So what has happened here? You may see that there is the roof detail is actually now away from the structure, even though it's at level 1. Now the reason for that is these walls are not roof bound at the moment, so we need to set them so that they're roof bound. All of the roofs need to be a set amount away from that finished level. So your finished ceiling level may be at 3,500, 3.5 meters away from finished floor level, but the roof will need to be significantly higher because you've got all of the roof trusses and various other things that would need to go on. So this here always adds in as a standard slightly higher than the actual internal room dimension, just to allow for those extra structural steel works, or whether it's wooden construction, however we're going to do that. So the way to stop that is we simply need to go back to our floor. We need to select the entire external perimeter of the building by simply tabbing over it, waiting for it all to be highlighted, and left clicking. And instead of unconnected, we're just going to click on that, and we're going to click up to level 1, and we're just going to apply. Once we've done that, we can go back to our 3D, and we can see there that now the external wall is now connected to our roof. If we wanted to, we could do the same for the internal walls, but typically we wouldn't need to do that. So that's how we start to build it up. We can see the doors are there, the windows are all there. We can start to play around with all the different parameters if we wanted to, i.e., changing the different types of windows, or making the windows bigger, or whatever it is that we decided we wanted to do. We could change the door types. We could change the roof type if we had a flat roof, and lots of other parameters. But for the purpose of this exercise, we don't need to do that at the moment. So once we've got our base construction, we can then start to set up 2D sheets or 3D views. As you can see, we've already started to get some nice sort of looking 3D type views. We may want to start setting architectural parameters by going into this edit type, and then we can start setting different colors, or we can start setting whether it's plasterboard or all of those sorts of details. There is lots of other parameters that go into this model, such as the heat transfer coefficients, the thermal masses of the building, and lots of other things which we have to look at for all the different regulations and British standards that we have to achieve when we design a building. But for the purpose of this, we're not going to set any of those today. So once we've got our floor plate, we know what we're doing. We can then start to look, i.e. either the next stage would be to start looking at putting some internal partitions. So again, to simply do that, we'll just simply use a wall. Instead of using a basic wall, we're going to just use an internal partition wall, so wall partition. And we're just going to come off the structure. We're just going to come across to this door, and we're just going to link it on there. So when we go back into our 3D now, you can see there's a partition wall, and currently it's up to level 1. So we're just going to move that to unconnected, and we're going to put it at 3.5 meters high. And there we have it. There's our, and we're going to do the same. And there's our internal partition. Maybe that's an office at the back of the shop, or something like that. I don't know. So then we need to add a door. So I've got a door on my other screen, which you may not be able to see. I'm just going to simply drag and drop the file. The reason that the door that I created was in 2015, you may have just seen that message pop up. Lots of different reasons, but the programming side of creating the new types are just easier in 2015. So something that I've done here is I've actually added a architectural feature, a plant instead of the door. That's just me picking the wrong file and dragging and drop it across, but we'll come on to that in a minute. So I'm just going to place that. Very similar process though, in terms of how we add the doors. So I'll just show you this file. It's just on my desktop. I've got all these files which I've created earlier. I've just named them some random names, but we can see here this is the door. I just dragged this one plant, but I'm going to drag the door across now so you can see that. So we just drag the door across. Again, I created it in 2015. We're now in 2020, so it's just upgrading. That's absolutely fine. It can do that. So we just wait for it to load. We can see the door's added. We'll just put the door in there, and you can see that all automatically links. We go into our 3D view, and there's the door. You can see that planter that I added earlier. There's the planter. Quite simply, we just drag and drop. We can move this around, just left click, and then just move it to where we want. We can add some more planters if we want. Just Control C, Control V, typical computer type skills just to move it across. I don't know, we might want to put a planter here, maybe a planter here as we first walk in the door, something like that. We can come up with a design and how we want the floor plate to look. As I mentioned earlier, the section is now just cutting this off, so I'm just going to pull this to the front door and I'm going to pull the back in slightly, just so that we can see inside the building. And there you have it. There's the plants that we've come up with. So we're going to go back to our floor plate. Just to mention at this stage, I'm flicking between two different views. We've got a 3D view and we've got a floor plate view here. So the reason that I'm just flicking between these two is just to give you an example. Sometimes we can have up to about 20 different floor views when we're designing a building, and when we're going into more complex details. And that's just all the different views. We can just flick between the views as and when we need. Typically that's why I have 2, 3, and when I'm doing some really complex models, I set up a 4th screen just so we can have all this stretched across all the different screens. So quite an important part of a shop. Well, for me, what I would say is the shelving. How do we get shelving in there? So just to make things a bit easier, I've just made some shelving. So I created this in 2017 version, and now we're just bringing it into 2020. So again, it's all in that file that we've seen. We can then just start to drop things around. So I've just put a bit of a wall unit at the back there. Maybe drop in some wall-mounted shelves. So I'm just going to drop them there for now, and we'll have a look at what they look like in 3D. Maybe we want to put a ceiling raft on the ceiling with some, make it as green as we possibly can. Lots of plants. We know the world at the moment would like to see plants as much as we can. So one thing about this piece of software, it is very data intensive. And because we're adding lots of data, lots of information into a 3D model, it can sometimes take a while. You can see up here, not responding. The computer that I'm currently working on is a Windows computer, Core i7 processor, with quite a lot of sort of power behind it. Typically a gaming computer is needed for these types of software, especially when we get into exporting larger models. And even still, when we add in some sort of high quality external families, it can still start to crash on us. So at this point, I'm just going to stop this video while I wait for this. I might just go and grab a coffee, and then we'll come back to something very similar to what we've got now. Cheers, guys. Have a nice break.